They're not getting the tie-in. So if we start the word there, and then go back and show them that this is the fulfillment of this. See what I'm saying? I think we might draw. Right. It gives them an explanation for what they're looking for. It shows them what they're looking for. It shows them, and everything goes to. Yep.
Hello.
Right. Was number B6 6 8 Ready, ready, set. Shabbat Shalom. Welcome to, and that can also mean just Sabbath peace, just peace. It's a greeting. So, anyway, even though this is not Friday night, we're still saying Shabbat Shalom. So, Welcome to Dot Ariel in Marion, Illinois, to our Hebrew classes. Jim's shaking his head like something's wrong. Is something wrong? Okay. Anyway, this part of the class is for Deb. So we had the discussion last week about how to pronounce the name. Or last time. Yeah, it's been a while because we've been ill, we've had holidays and everything else. But I had to bring this up first thing tonight before we do our study and see our video because it's amazing, Deb. I was looking at this and you asked me how do you get ova out of that with we have the patak and stuff down in here. And I got to looking at it and I thought, well, they're right. That doesn't look right. So I dug and I dug and I dug, went through history, went through different translations, went back to Nehemiah Gordon because Nehemiah has a great big thing up here about the name and how to pronounce it, and that we need to use the name because it's a blessing that the Father gave us. And it is a blessing that the Father gave us, but there's a reason behind it. We were studying that before about what Yud He Vav He means. But anyway, let's get this for a minute. And I'm going to wrap it up and tell you in a short time here what I found. Anyway, Nehemiah is researching. He's looking back at as many old documents and document everything that he can to find it. And he's found vowel points. In fact, I looked over here, our own codex has it in there. But what I found out was this is the controversy because everybody says you can't say the name. Roy Blizzard, he even explained that, that you couldn't because there really wasn't any vowel points or anything back in the beginning of that, which is true. But I always went to the fact that they had to speak the name properly in the temple at least once a year. So it had to be passed down and kept alive. And I was convinced too that that's how Yeshua was, being called blasphemous and everything so much. But then I got to looking and I thought, okay, so when was the vowel points invented? Who invented them? Why? Right? Well, they said after they came out of Babylon that a lot of the language was being uh, misunderstood. So they started putting the vowel points in that in there and they've carried it on, right? Well, they say that these do not match up with Jehovah. And I'm going to read you one quick thing in here because they say the rabbis put that in there deliberately to make you say Adonai, that these are the vowel points for Adonai. And they say that's why the confusion is in there. They didn't want you pronouncing the name, so they put the vowel points in there to make you say Adonai and not say Jehovah. Or they say that the rabbi's reasoning is that the best way that they know how to pronounce this is by saying Yahweh because of YHVH. And they said, the V used to be a W. So they say Yahweh is how they pronounce it. They said that they put these vowel points because when you pointed it out, I looked at that and I thought, whoa, that don't add up. Something's wrong here. You can't really say Jehovah with these vowel points. And that's what I found out was that they say that they did that so that you could not say the name of Jehovah or Yahweh or however that the proper pronunciation is. They wanted to keep that secret and keep it an oral tradition passed down from priest to priest.
Yeah,
Go
that's
ahead.
what I mean. That's sort of what Roy Blizzard said. He said the only one who said it were the priests.
Yes.
That was the only one who said it, and he he said it probably the true pronunciation um, died with the last priest who said it. I mean, something to that effect. He was like saying, and they asked Roy, I said, well, how do you say it? And he said, he just pronounces it Yud He Vav He,
Yeah.
because he said, nobody knows for sure.
And when I started these classes, I told you that I'm
Mhm.
more interested in the Paleo Hebrew and
Yep.
understanding what the literal meaning of the words are
Hmm.
more than being able to pronounce or speak Hebrew.
Right.
And I have always looked at it like he's telling you, because the question is, well, what authority do you have? How do we know you're a God? Wherein lies your authority?
Hmm.
Well, he said that this is my name forever, and name in Hebrew denotes authority. So if you look at this in the Paleo Hebrew, this is the Sabbath, this is the promise, this is the path of life.
In these scrolls, in the parts that have the name written out, I mean, I've never looked into it. How is it in the Dead Sea Scrolls?
Well, most of the Dead Sea Scrolls, as I understand it, now some of them do and some of them don't, but as I understand it, doesn't have the vowel points on it.
Yeah, no vowel points.
Yeah. So, it would still just be Yud Hey Vav Hey.
Okay.
You have to have a mic. We can't hear you. Here, you want this one real quick? But you got to give it back to me, you promise?
Wouldn't that be considered in oral traditions of the priests that pronounce correctly of God's name?
Well, it would be oral, which a lot of people like people like who's Karaite Jews, Nehemiah Gordon and them, they do not believe in oral tradition. They don't think that there is any oral tradition. Well, I'm not telling anybody how to believe. I give you what I have. You make up your own mind. You have to be convinced in your own mind because everybody's story is different. I see things differently than you do, and that you do, and you see, how it goes. You're looking through your eyes, I'm looking through mine. Now, to me, there is oral tradition because uh, it was not, as far as I understand, everything that I can see, and I tell you, it's hard. It's not easy to look this any language up and understand it. The oldest record that we have is what is it called? A cuneiform? Cuneiform? Yeah, that we literally have that you can hold. Okay. Um, there's old, scrolls. Now the Dead Sea Scrolls dated back farther than anything else that they have. But to me, there had to be an oral tradition because in my mind, and from everything I've seen, the written word was not literally written until Mount Sinai. I mean, if I from the things I see in the Bible, to me, that's when the written word literally came down to them, and that was a special gift. It was really a great and wondrous thing to actually have the lessons, the words of life from God Himself, to where you could hold on to it.
Well, there were too many uneducated people, right? I mean, you would
Yeah.
have to speak it. Like when didn't Solomon wasn't he didn't he have to open because nobody else had the Bible? He opened it to
Right.
read it to everyone.
Well, and
So
the
it's
the
an, yeah,
kings had to write their own.
yeah.
They had to literally write their own scrolls.
But the common
Yeah.
people didn't.
No, common people, the only way they learned was to go to the synagogue and actually, because the books were kept there, and learn. But how did they learn before that, Deb?
I know. Well, I mean, I would think it had to be because we've had a flood, right, with Noah.
Yes.
There had to be some. It had to be an oral tradition because I don't know that he didn't have books he brought on the ark with him, did he?
Well, yeah, he did, but I believe he did because, and then there's everybody tries to argue with this too, but I believe that the book of Enoch was given to Noah.
Oh, okay.
And I believe that that was the only written account until they were literally giving it at Mount Sinai.
Right.
So they looked at the book of Enoch, like, wow, this is really great.
Hmm.
But, there was uh, the Ten Commandments, or, the Torah was placed in the ark, but there was also other books that was placed in the side of the ark. Now they don't really um, pinpoint, as far as I've ever found out, how's, what means the side. Does that mean beside them in the ark, or was there a little literal compartment in the side of the ark, or what? Because it says it was placed the Ten Commandments, the commandments of God, the scrolls, all of that, the
Aaron's
budding
rod.
staff, the
Hmm.
manna was placed in the
The ark.
ark, but then it says, and the other writings were placed in the side. So what does that actually mean?
Probably alongside.
Yeah, long side, or was there actually a compartment in the side of the ark, or what? Who knows? But anyway, I still believe there was an oral tradition. I believe that the writings that Enoch had, he actually wrote down.
Yeah.
And they don't like the writings of Enoch because, that actually puts even angels above men where they're at right now, above kings, and all of that being, so there's big, yeah, they don't like, well, the watchers are supposed to be watching them and
Right.
corrupted things. And then it actually talks about authorities, those in authority corrupt men. So, yeah,
Hmm.
they don't want all that written. But anyway, I want to read this real quick because it says Nehemiah Gordon. This is okay. I really like this guy. I don't know if anybody's ever heard of Jeff Benner. He has a site that's called Ancient Hebrew. It's at ancienthebrew.org. His name is Jay. He's been teaching for a long time, and he teaches the Paleo Hebrew and that. He goes around, teaches classes. He's done a lot of research. In fact, a lot of people that have wrote their dissertations and that for their doctorate degrees has used his writings. So, and he's not really that old, but he's dedicated his life to doing it. He has even what they call a manual, or not exactly. I'm sorry, what? I don't know. He moved. He did live around Florida, and I don't know if he's in Texas now or where he's at. I kind of lost track of him. But what he does, he has taken the whole book of Genesis. I think he's taken the whole Torah. I think he's finally finished that. But he takes it and he literally has the pictograph right below the letter. So you can actually look at a pictograph Torah. I think he calls it a manual translation. So you can actually see that. And he teaches ancient Hebrew. Anyway, this is what he says. He says, Nehemiah Gordon has been a strong advocate for the pronunciation Jehovah. So I sent him an email concerning the use of the O. You see, that's what we have problems with here in Jehovah, and emailed him. Below is my question, but I'm adding some clarifications for your benefit in the brackets. I have noticed that words in the Masoretic text that include the Nicole Kolam, the Nicode are the dots and dashes added to Hebrews in the Masoretic text. The kolam is a single dot placed above a letter to represent the O sound, are spelled with a vav in the Dead Sea Scrolls. For instance, uh, Elohim includes the column in the Masoretic text, but in the Dead Sea Scrolls, it is spelled anyway. It's different. Oh, wait a minute. I got my glasses right here. What's matter? I'm sorry. All right. So now he's saying that in the Masoretic text and in other texts that you can literally see that it's there and that is pronounced O, but it's not in this. Okay, so this has to be drawn you somewhere else. If in fact the name is pronounced Yehovah, then his name must include the kolam, but we never see a double vav in the name in the Dead Sea Scrolls. The pronunciation Yehovah would be written as if Yud He Vav He. If this were the pronunciation, we would expect to see it written without the vowels in the Dead Sea Scrolls, but we do not. Or no, I'm sorry. He's saying what we would see is we would see Yud He Vav Vav He, because of Vav being an an A or the O sound. Okay, do you follow me so far? So there'd be a double Vav in here instead of one if it was written without the vowels. Because remember, some Hebrew letters represent vowels. Okay. Based on this, my assumption has been that Yehovah or any other form that includes the vowel O or U in the consonant V could not be the pronunciation, as the Dead Sea Scrolls always show only one vowel and therefore cannot be pronounced as a vowel O or U or as the consonant V. Okay. The following is Nehemiah's response. I got to get a drink of water. I'm sorry. Regarding the double Bob, this is his answer. Nehemiah's. This is an interesting suggestion. Do you hear that? In other words, I'm a scholar. I'm not going to listen to you. This is what I'm getting from it. The Qumran scrolls are not consistent about inserting vowels to indicate kolam or sharuk kibbutz. In the case of the name, the matter is complicated by the fact that it would produce a double vav. What's an easy way to produce a double vav that we remember? We already learned it. Just put a dot in it, right? That's all you got to do, and it doubles the letter. You don't have to put two vowels there. Just put a vav with a dot. Now you've got a double vav. I would be very surprised to find such a thing in Qumran. In the Masoretic text, we find these double vavs. Now you see that? In the Masoretic text, we find these double vavs representing the sound vo, as in avan, mitzvot, etc. So you see what the argument is here with these two? He's saying, okay, it can't be the way you're pronouncing it, because if it was, there would have to be a dot above this representing that it's two vowels, or it would have to be written with two vowels. Yes, to say Yehovah, because for it to be ho, it would have to have another vav there representing the O sound, right? Okay, that's not hard to understand, right? But he's saying it's not there. It's not there in the Dead Sea Scrolls. It's nowhere. But it is represented in other places. So he's going by the vowel sounds, the vowels, but he never explains Nehemiah. Because remember, Nehemiah has built a whole practice now. I mean, he's got books all over the place about pronouncing the name. I mean, he's really made himself a big spot in the circuit on Yehovah. Okay, now I can't argue with him because he's a scholar who goes around and fixes old scrolls. That's what he's done for a living, and he's going in there and he finds out, okay, this is the true text because there's a note written up above here by a scribe that says that this was added or that this was not put in the proper place. So that's what he does for a living. He's compounded more and more evidence to that fact. He finds older and older writings. He's found writings in the Catholic Church archives. Okay. But then Jeff Benner has an excellent point here that you can't do it because all the oldest scrolls, the oldest writings that we know of, doesn't have vowel points. So if it doesn't have a point above the Vav or a double Vav, it can't be pronounced Jehovah. Okay. So I'm glad that you guys brought that up, and I went back and looked at it because I never really, I don't know, it was just like when you guys said it and I looked at it and I thought, well, they're right. That can't come out like that. There's no way. It can only be Yahweh because that's got the ah sound, right? That's the only way it can come out. So then when I looked and I seen that they said, can we believe everything the rabbis say? There's a lot of things they say that I totally disagree with, but I can't disagree with everything that they say because, they've studied this for thousands of years, and they've studied it with the idea that God's going to kill them or punish them if they do it wrong. So I'm not going to condemn them either. But that's the controversy because those vowel points right there makes you say Adonai and not pronounce the name. To me, it's a worthless argument. What does it matter? How many names do you literally know God by? He has names that denote character or or assignment, whatever you want to say, that he's doing at that time. He's addressed by that name at that time because it has a specific meaning to it.
It's how he revealed himself to that
Right.
person at that time.
And it points you in that direction so that you already got the mindset. Like, okay, I'm going to read this passage in this book. Now, emotionally, how should I be setting myself in focus for this? Okay, well, that puts the letter, up here, maybe, or there's a color up here, blue. Okay, well, then how do you perceive that? You look at that, well, okay, like I should be a little down in the dumps, a little blue. We know what it is to be blue. So, what it's telling you is that when you read this, you need to be reading this in an emotional state of sadness and regret. See, that's what Hebrew does. It sets you into the correct format for what you're reading. Why's that, Vern? Because you're supposed to use your imagination on these things. When you were a little kid and you wanted to get out and be an airplane pilot, did you have to jump in an airplane and literally fly the thing? Or could you sit yourself down on the ground or whatever in the seat and you're sitting there pretending like and you're looking down here and it literally becomes real for you because you used your imagination. God wants this to become real for you. The only way that you can really make this real for you is by literally putting your imagination into it and placing yourself there. That's why we always say at Passover, it's supposed to be like it's actually like you're there and it's happening to you. When you read the words, people are literally supposed to be feeling like it's happening to them at that time and they're experiencing it. And why is that, Vern? Because your mind is nothing but a programming unit. It literally does not know whether you're living that situation or you're just imagining it in your mind. If you don't believe that, how many times have you been scared to death of thinking that something might have happened to one of your family members and it didn't? In other words, you worried about something that didn't exist because you think in your mind that it does or could exist. It's the same thing. That's what your mind does, and your body reacts by a chemical reaction, and it reinforces it and it puts that into a permanent memory. This is what you're doing. That's why you literally need to retrain your mind and step into this state. You have to literally believe that you're going to not live in this world, but you're going to live in the world to come. So I really appreciate you guys. Thank you very much for making me look at that. Uh, and I'll be honest with you. This is not my forte. I can struggle through Hebrew reading it, but I can take the words themselves and break them down and look at them and see things that, oh, wow. Yeah, now I understand it. And it creates a whole new thought wave within my mind, just like when we were talking about the word mercy. You know, I never really understood mercy when I was in the Baptist church. But then when, a rabbi told me that that's the word for womb, I thought, what and how in the world can that be the word for womb? And what does mercy have to do with it? But when you sit and think about it and you just literally imagine a woman that has birth in her, she's got a fetus that's growing and is being protected and it's being developed. Why it's in a covering until it reaches its full potential and can be born, then you can see, wow, that means so much more than just mercy. Our English words do not do justice to this. So thank you guys for pointing that out. I went and looked at it, and I've really made up my mind that yes, they did do that, just so you would not pronounce the name. But pronouncing the name to me is okay if you want to say Yahweh or whatever you want to say. I'm not going to condemn anybody for Yahweh, Jehovah, or whatever they want to say, convinced in their own minds. But I want them to understand that this is where this four-letter tetragrammaton is where God's authority lies, because in this word is literally life. And God is the only one that can bring you life. Okay? So, no, we don't know quite how to say it. And, that's okay. But we need to understand what the word literally means, what we're calling upon God for. We're calling upon Him for life. So, with all that said, thank you very much for pointing this out to me. I'm glad you did because I learned something that I really should have known but I never really paid attention to before because I really didn't care about it. I wanted to know what the name meant and why, it was so important. But pronouncing it really, yeah, really wasn't my forte. I knew what Dr. Blizzard had said, and I knew what Benner had said, and I knew what Nehemiah was doing. And problem is, though, Deb, most of these Bible studies that I've been to, it's the same thing. They sit there and they look at, okay, well, let's understand Revelation. We got to understand. If we understand Revelation, we're going to have it. And what did they do? They'll go back and they look at, okay, here's the seven churches. Let's look at the seven church in wherever, whichever one you want to start with, in the area that they lived in. Yeah, okay, Ephesus. Let's look at Ephesus. What was their trade? What was what are they learning? They're learning history. They're not learning what the message is that's in that period. They don't even know where it goes back into the Old Testament at. So all they're learning is things that they can sit and argue about. And what did Paul say? He said, don't sit around and argue about endless genealogies and ideas and all that, because it doesn't mean a thing. You can think you're as smart as you want to be, but if you don't know what God's trying to tell you, it don't matter the hill of beans. So you ready, Jim? Let's go ahead and hit this video and I'll shut up because I know Jim said, well, we should have been done an hour ago.
Aleph, Bet, Flet, Gimel, Dalet, Hey, Vav, Zayin, Chet, Tet, Yud, Kaf, Chaf, Lamed, Mem, Nun, Samech, Ayin, Pei, Fet, Tzadi, Kuf, Resh, Shin, Sef, Taf. Now I think I've said enough.
Welcome to another lesson in our series from the Aleph Bet, a program for anyone of any age who wishes to learn to read and understand Hebrew, especially Hebrew that's part of the Jewish experience in America. I'm Mark Golub, and as always, it's my pleasure to be with you again. If you've been with us up till now, you know we've learned 6 Hebrew letters. We've learned the first 2 letters of the Hebrew alphabet, or Aleph Bet, the Aleph, which is one of 2 silent letters in the Hebrew alphabet. The Aleph makes no sound at all, just as the English letter B makes no sound in the English word lamb. And we've learned the Hebrew letter Bet, which makes the sound of the English letter B or B. And we also learned that the first consonant sound in the name of each Hebrew letter tells us which sound that letter makes. So the Bet makes the sound of the English letter B or B. And we also saw this animation of the letter Bet forming from a bed with a ball inside it. Thank you, Alan. Actually, as you've learned, the dot inside a Hebrew letter is called a dagesh. And the dagesh can appear in almost any Hebrew letter. And in most cases, the dagesh does not change the sound that a letter makes. There are only 3 Hebrew letters which do change the way they're pronounced, depending on whether they do or do not have a dagesh in them. And one of these 3 letters is the bet. So in a subsequent lesson, I'll show you that the bet is pronounced as the English letter V, when the bet has no dagesh. But for now, we're only learning the bet with the dagesh, and the bet is pronounced B as the English letter B. In addition to learning the first 2 letters of the Hebrew alphabet, the Aleph and Bet, we've also learned the last 2 letters of the Hebrew alphabet, the Shin and the Tuf. The Shin makes the SH sound in English, shh. And we have another animation of an old-time ship turning into the Shin. Here the ship with its 3 sails are turning into the Shin with the dot over the right sail, so to speak. And the Tuf, which makes the sound of the English letter T, T. And since the Tuf is the only Hebrew letter with a big toe, we have an animation of the Tuf's big toe. You see that a good way of remembering that Tuf makes a T sound is the big toe. And if you see a shin with a dagesh in it, the dagesh does not change the sound of the shin. It's still pronounced shh. And if you see a tuf with a dagesh in it, in Sephardic Hebrew, the dialect of Hebrew spoken in Israel, and the dialect we're treating here on from the Aleph Bet. The dagesh does not change the sound of the tough either, so that a tough with or without a dagesh, both are pronounced like the English letter T, T. So those are our first four Hebrew letters, the Aleph, the Bet, the Shin, and the Taf. And then we've also learned the Hebrew letter which makes the L sound in English, like the English letter L, U. It's called the Lamed, the Lamed. And we've also learned the Hebrew letter Mem Sofit, or what we call in English the final Mem, which obviously makes the M sound. And this final Mem will only appear at the end of a Hebrew word, as in this syllable, Lam. Lam. This final Mem will never appear at the beginning of a word or in the middle of a word. The final Mem only appears at the end of a Hebrew word. And you know what, Alex? We'll just show everyone what a Mem looks like if it comes at the beginning or in the middle of a word. There's your Mem in general, which we'll learn more about in a subsequent lesson. Right now, we're only concerned with the way the Mem looks when it comes at the end of a word. And again, it's called the Mem Sofit, or the final Mem in English. So we've learned the following 6 Hebrew letters: the Aleph and the Bet, the Lamed and the final Mem, and the Shin and the Taf. Aleph Bet, Lamed final Mem, Shin Taf. Your first 6 Hebrew letters. Now we've also learned 4 Hebrew vowels. Let me show you the vowels: the Patach, the Kamatz, the Cholam Malay, and the Cholam Chaser. The Patach is pronounced A, as the vowel in the English word father, as in father, and the patach is placed under a Hebrew letter. And since here the patach is placed under the silent aleph, the sound of this Hebrew syllable would simply be the sound which the vowel makes. In this case, it's simply ah, ah. The kamatz also makes the sound of the vowel ah in the word father, and therefore this syllable is also pronounced ah. Silent aleph with a kamatz is simply pronounced ah. And we've also learned the Hebrew vowel for o in English, as in the word coat. And the vowel o in Hebrew is called the cholam. And I explained last time that when Israelis pronounce the cholam, it's really a shorter O than the English O. It's sort of pronounced oh, oh. And when the cholam is written over a vertical line, and actually you'll learn later that this vertical line is also a Hebrew letter, the Hebrew letter vav, which we'll teach you later on. But when the cholam is written over this vertical line, it's called chalom maleh, or a full or complete cholam. But the cholam O can also be written simply as a dot placed to the top left of a letter, as you see here over the top left of the aleph. And it's still pronounced the exact same way, O, or again, an Israeli might say, oh. But it's called a cholam chaser, which means a missing or lacking cholam. Either way, this vowel is pronounced as the English vowel O or O if you're trying to speak more in an Israeli accent. And again, we have an animation for you. I teach young students that when you get hit on the top of the head, you say O. Or you can also remember that the Hebrew dot on top of a letter is like an English O that is simply filled in. Anyway, this dot, this column is pronounced as the English vowel O. So here now are your 4 vowels written all with the silent aleph. Can you read these Hebrew syllables? The first one is ah. The second syllable is ah again. Both the patach and the kamats make the same vowel sound. The third is o. Excellent. And the last one is also o. Mitsuyan. Excellent. You've also learned that while Hebrew consonants are letters, Hebrew vowels are, as you can just see here, dots and dashes, which tend to be placed either under or over Hebrew letters or consonants to create Hebrew syllables. And do you remember the 2 rules of Hebrew which make pronouncing Hebrew words so easy? The first rule is, in Hebrew, every syllable has one vowel, only one vowel, and always one vowel. Let me say that again. In Hebrew, every syllable has one vowel, only one vowel, and always one vowel. There's always a 1-to-1 relationship between the number of vowels in a Hebrew word and the number of syllables in a Hebrew word. Count the vowels, the dots and the dashes, and you immediately know how many syllables are in that Hebrew word. So let's look at some examples. Look at this Hebrew syllable. How would you pronounce it? If you said Shah, you are absolutely correct. The Hebrew consonant is the shin, and reading down, which is how Hebrew is read, the patach under the shin is added to the sh sound of the shin to create the entire syllable Shah. Shah. Now, how about this syllable? Look at the Hebrew letter and then add the vowel to the sound of the letter, and you get bo. Excellent. Mitsuyan. Bo. Now try reading this nonsense word. Read the first letter and vowel under it, then reading right to left, which is the way Hebrew is read, pronounce the second letter and the vowel underneath it. How did you read the first syllable of this nonsense word? Shah is correct. And how did you read the second syllable of this nonsense word? La is correct. And now put these 2 syllables together, and how would you pronounce this 2-syllable nonsense word? Shalah is correct, with the accent on the last syllable of the word, which is how most Hebrew words are accented. Shalah, mitsuyan. And finally, we've learned one more rule about reading Hebrew, actually the secret to being able to pronounce any Hebrew word you'll ever see, and that rule involves the only dots which are not counted as a Hebrew vowel. These dots are called the shva. The secret to reading Hebrew is the shva, and the rule is the shva is never counted as a vowel. Again, the shva is never counted as a vowel. When a shva comes at the beginning of a syllable, it is not a vowel, even though the shva is pronounced I, the short I, as in the word fish, I. But when a shva comes at the end of a syllable, the shva is silent. And the purpose of the silent shva is to show us that the syllable is extended by one Hebrew letter, the letter over the silent shva. And again, a silent shva always ends a syllable or closes a syllable. And the secret to pronouncing Hebrew is to remember a shva is never counted as a vowel. I can't say it often enough. A shva is never counted as a vowel. All the other dots and dashes in Hebrew are vowels. And by counting them, you'll always know how many syllables are in a Hebrew word. But a shva is never counted as a vowel. Alex is behind the camera. Tell me the rule, Alex, of the shva.
A schwa is never counted as a vowel.
A shva is never counted as a vowel. Alex knows, now you know. A shva is never counted as a vowel. So let's take a look at the two-syllable word we just read a moment ago. How many vowels are in this nonsense word? 2 is correct. How many syllables are in this nonsense word? Again, 2 is correct. There's always a one-to-one relationship between the number of vowels in a Hebrew word and the number of syllables in that Hebrew word. So again, how would you read this two-syllable nonsense word? Shala is correct, mitsuyan. But now look at this word with a silent shva under the second letter. How many vowels are in this nonsense word now? And the answer is just 1. There's a kamatz under the shin, but there's a silent shva under the lamed. And a shva is never counted as a vowel. And the silent shva simply extends the preceding syllable by 1 letter and then ends that syllable. So there's now only 1 vowel in this nonsense word, and therefore there's only 1 syllable in this nonsense word. How would you read this 1-syllable nonsense word? Begin with the sound of the shin, add the sound of the kamatz, then reading right to left, add the sound of the lamed. And if you said shall, you are absolutely right. Mitsuyan, mitsuyan. This nonsense word is pronounced shall. And if you can read this 1-syllable nonsense word, you have the main building block to be able to sound out and pronounce almost any Hebrew word you'll ever see. Try one more nonsense word, and we'll make it just a little harder for you. So first take a look at this word and count the number of vowels in the word. Take your time. You should have counted 2 vowels in this word. The shin has a kamatz under it, so that kamatz is vowel number 1. The lamed has a silent shva under it, and remember, a shva is never counted as a vowel. And the bet has a cholam after it, and the cholam is the second vowel of this nonsense word. By the way, we've also learned the rule that every Hebrew letter must either have a vowel or a shva. Every Hebrew letter must either have a vowel or a shva. It can never have both. It must have one, either a vowel or a shva. So what does the final mem in this nonsense word have under it? It looks like there's nothing there. But you may remember that the last letter of every Hebrew word without a vowel has a silent shva under it. But at the end of the word, the silent shva is simply understood. And therefore, in almost all cases, the silent shva is not actually written. So in this nonsense word, there are 2 vowels, the kamatz under the shin and the cholam after bet. And of course, if there are 2 vowels, there are also 2 syllables in this nonsense word. How would you pronounce the first syllable of this nonsense word? If you said shall, you are correct again. The silent shva under the lamed simply extends the first syllable by 1 letter, the lamed, over the silent shva. And how would you pronounce the second syllable? The second syllable. Look at the letter, vowel, and letter. If you said boom, boom, you are correct. We have a bet followed by the cholam o, followed by a final mem, and there's a silent shva under it, though it does not have to be written. And this creates the second syllable, boom, or again, some Israelis might call it boom. So now, how would you read this entire nonsense word? Shalbom is correct. Mitsuyan, mitsuyan, shalbom, with the accent on the last syllable. And again, if you can read this nonsense word, you are well on your way to being able to read and pronounce any Hebrew word you'll ever see. By the way, here are the 3 Hebrew words you already know how to read and understand. Take a look at them. And these words that you already know are Shabbat, Shalom, Abba. Shabbat, Shalom, Abba. And these words mean Sabbath peace, Father, or Sabbath peace, Daddy. Shabbat, Shalom, Abba. Shabbat is the Sabbath, from the Hebrew root shin, bet, tuf. Remember, all Hebrew words have 3-letter roots, and the 3-letter root shin, bet, tuf has always something to do with resting. And so the Sabbath is the day of rest for all mankind, even for all the beasts of the world. And shalom is peace, from the Hebrew root shin, lamed, mem, and that root means whole or complete. Shin, lamed, mem, for the word shalom. And then Abba is the Hebrew word for father or daddy. And some of you have asked, what about the word for mommy or mother? It's ima in Hebrew. Ima is the word for mother or mommy, for those anxious to be able to wish their mothers Shabbat Shalom. But you're now able to read this entire Hebrew phrase, Shabbat Shalom Abba, Sabbath peace, Father. So now let's learn another Hebrew letter. The letters I have for you on this lesson are very easy to learn. The first letter is round in the upper corner, rounded in the upper corner, round. And this is the Hebrew letter resh, which makes the sound of the English letter R. R. By the way, Israelis will roll the resh, similar to the way French speakers roll a French R. And you can either roll the resh, or not. Many Americans do not roll the resh. So try reading this syllable. Ra. Good. Or ra, if you want to roll the R. How about this syllable? Ra, again, very good. How about this syllable? Ro. Ro. Very good. And this syllable. Ro or ro. Again, mitsuyan, mitsuyan. Pretty easy, isn't it? By the way, here's a real word many of you know. Take a look at this real word. How would you pronounce this word? If you said bar, you're correct. Bar. And bar means son, as in the term bar mitzvah, a son of the commandments. And the term bar mitzvah applies to any Jewish boy 13 years old or older who, from the day he turns 13, becomes responsible for his behavior to others and becomes responsible to the Jewish community as well. When a Jewish boy reaches his 13th birthday, he automatically becomes a bar mitzvah, a son of the commandments. And from that day forward, that boy is included in the quorum of at least 10 adult Jews who constitute the group of people needed to be able to perform certain Jewish commandments in public. This quorum of at least 10 is called a minyan. And for example, if the Jewish community is about to read the Torah in public, a minyan of 10 or more Jews above the age of 13 is needed. Or if one loses an immediate relative, like a mother or a father, a sister or brother, a husband or wife, or a child, one becomes a mourner in the Jewish tradition and recites a special prayer reaffirming life called the Kaddish. For a mourner to be able to recite the Kaddish, a minyan must be present. And any Jewish boy 13 years old or older is a bar mitzvah and therefore may be counted in that minyan. It's similar to what happens to us here in America when someone turns 18. That person reaches majority at 18, and for example, that person may then vote, which is an expression of American responsibility. The only difference is that the Jewish tradition marks this change in personal status with a ceremony, called, of course, a bar mitzvah ceremony, when typically a boy is called to the Torah as a symbol of his becoming responsible for his own Jewish life. And one of the things you'll often hear people say or ask is, when were you bar mitzvahed? Or were you bar mitzvahed? As if bar mitzvah is something done to a person. The term is almost treated as a verb, to be bar mitzvahed. I was bar mitzvahed, you were bar mitzvahed, he was bar mitzvahed. When actually bar mitzvah is not a verb at all, but it's a state of being. One becomes a bar mitzvah by becoming 13 years old. And so the proper question to ask someone is, did you have a bar mitzvah ceremony? Or where did you have your bar mitzvah ceremony? Not were you bar mitzvahed? Anyway, all this from a word you can now read, bar. And here's the word for a girl, which many of you also know, and which you can now read, bat, which means daughter. And bat mitzvah means daughter of the commandments. And I want to show you one more Hebrew letter and another very important Hebrew word. This Hebrew letter is the only Hebrew letter with a hole in its side. See the hole in the side of the letter? This is the only Hebrew letter with a hole in its side. And you can probably guess the sound this Hebrew letter makes. It's the Hebrew letter H, and it makes a sound. And it's called the letter Hey. The letter Hey is the fifth letter of the Hebrew alphabet. And whenever I look at a hay, I think of a barn with a hayloft, which is another way you can remember the name of this letter and the sound it makes. This is the letter Hey. And here's an animation of a barn with a hayloft turning into a hay. Here's the hayloft. Very good, Alan. And just like the English H, when
Thank you very much. I just had to point this out real quick because I want to keep everybody fascinated with Hebrew. What did he say hey was? The only letter with what? A hole in the side. So when we think about Yeshua on the cross and he was pierced in his side, it was literally saying the letter hey. Now, if you go back and you look at our Paleo Hebrew as what the importance of hay is, literally the beginning of your bar mitzvah or whatever, your being the son of the commandments is because you're recognizing God. You're raising your arms to Him. You're saying, hey. Literally, it says that Eve was taken from Adam's side. The believer is also taken from Yeshua's side because the blood in the water was revealed. So I just wanted to point that interesting fact to you as when we're learning this stuff, this is the importance. It's painting a picture. It's putting a thought in your mind. So when you see something like that, you recognize it when he was telling you this stuff, then recognize the fact that you're reprogramming yourself into looking at what the scripture really and truly says. Okay? That's all. Back to the movie. Anybody got popcorn?
From the Hebrew, hey has a vowel. It's pronounced like the English letter H. And just like the English H, when the hey comes at the end of a word, the hey is really silent. So try reading this syllable. Look at the letter and the vowel you've learned, the cholam. And this syllable is pronounced ho. Very good, correct. Ho. How about this two-syllable nonsense word? Ho ho is correct. Mitsuyan. Ho ho. Or ho ho. Now try reading this syllable. Ha is correct. Mitsuyan. And by the way, if you put this syllable ha in front of a noun as a prefix, it adds the word the to that noun. Ha is the definite article in Hebrew, and it's translated the. So, for example, you know this word, Shabbat, and now you also know this Hebrew word as well. How would you pronounce this three-syllable Hebrew word? Just add ha in front of Shabbat, and you'll have it. If you said Hashabbat, Mitsuyan, Mitsuyan, Hashabbat. And what does Hashabbat mean? It means the Shabbat or the Sabbath. Hashabbat means the Shabbat because the syllable ha added to a noun adds the word the in front of that noun. And I keep repeating, that's how easy Hebrew is. When you see a hey in front of a noun, it's the definite article translated the. A hey at the beginning of a noun is the word the in English. And now here's the new word of the day, the new word of this lesson. And after Shabbat, it's the most important word in the Jewish tradition. In fact, the word I'm about to show you, which you can now read, is the basis of Jewish life, and it's the greatest treasure the Jewish people possess. Here is the word, you read it. Some of you may recognize it right away. If you don't, just take your time, take a moment. How many vowels are in this word? Two is correct, the cholam after the tuf and the kamatz under the resh. So if there are two vowels in this word, there are two syllables in this word. How would you pronounce the first syllable of this word? Toe is correct. Toe. And the second syllable? And remember, at the end of a word, the hey tends to be silent. If you said ra, you are correct. Ra or ra. So put the word together. Torah or Torah is correct. Mitsuyan, mitsuyan. This is the Hebrew word Torah. Literally, the Torah means teaching or law is the Torah. The Torah is, first of all, the 5 books of Moses, the most important set of books in the Jewish tradition. Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy, the first 5 books of the Jewish Bible. And the Torah, which is written meticulously by hand on parchment and wrapped around 2 wooden rollers. The Torah is kept in a beautiful holy ark, as you see here, often with other Torah scrolls, or Torot, the plural of Torah, as you see here. And the Torah is read in the synagogue every Monday, Thursday, and Shabbat, on Saturday mornings and again on Saturday afternoons. And the Torah not only contains all the great stories of mankind's birth and growth, the creation of the world and of humanity, the story of Cain and Abel, and the story of Noah. The Torah also describes how the Jewish people were born, beginning with the great patriarchs and matriarchs, Abraham, Isaac and Jacob, Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, and Leah. And then describe how Jacob's name was changed to Israel, and how his children became known as the children of Israel, and how the children of Israel became slaves to Pharaoh in Egypt, and how Moses led the Israelites out of Egyptian bondage to a modest hill called Mount Sinai, where the children of Israel stood as one at the foot of the mountain to receive the Torah with the words, "We will do and we will understand, Na'aseh v'nishma." And the Torah goes on to describe the wanderings of the children of Israel in the wilderness for an entire generation, virtually 40 years, until they stood in the plains of Moab, overlooking the Jordan River and their homeland of Canaan. And there Moses speaks to them for the last time and then passes away without ever reaching the promised land himself. And in addition to these marvelous, marvelous stories, the Torah contains the laws which serve as the foundation of Jewish life throughout the centuries. The Torah is like the constitution of the Jewish people, containing all the values and goals and ideals of the Jewish people. Values and goals which have been passed from parent to child, and then child again, from Sinai to this very day. The Torah is the constitution of the Jewish people in that it provides the foundation and basis of Jewish life. It contains the 10 Commandments, and it contains the Shema, the most important single line of Jewish identity. Hear, O Israel, Adonai is our God, and Adonai is one. There is nothing more beloved to the Jewish people than the Torah. Nothing. When it's marched around the synagogue, people reach out with their prayer book or their talit, their prayer shawl, to touch it and kiss it. The Torah is the soul of the Jewish people. It's the love of the Jewish people. And the wondrous thing about the Torah is that it's constantly being read and interpreted by great rabbinic sages throughout our history and to this very day. Minds of genius and extraordinary intellect and exquisite human compassion who've explained that more important than.
I want to point out something real quick because we need to end so everybody can leave. That needs to be leaving by 8 o'clock, and it's 8 o'clock now. Let me show you why I'm such an advocate against our present day symbolism of Christmas. Okay. Because what do we have? We have a guy dressed in a red suit. What does red represent? The blood, right? And he has a white beard and all this. When you have a beard and you have white hair, what does that represent in Hebrew? Wisdom, right? And what does Santa Claus say? Right? You just learned that. This is his catchphrase, ho, 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 right? What does the hey mean in Hebrew? Literally, the hay stands for to behold, breath, creation. So you need to understand this because a lot of stuff that he was just going through, like saying shana na 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 in our songs, that has a Hebraic meaning behind it. Ho 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 has a Hebraic meaning behind it. So when you say that, or when this character says that, Santa Claus, what does it mean when you say something 3 times in Hebrew? It's the ultimate, right? It's a confirmation. It's like saying holy, holy, holy. You're saying there's nothing holier than God, right? 3 times is a witness. It's a witnessing to other people. So if this is a witness and he's saying ho ho ho, what's he saying? He is saying that he is the ultimate to behold, that he is the ultimate in the spirit, that he is the ultimate creator. And this is what you're teaching your children. You sit there and you add things like he sees you when you're sleeping, he knows when you're awake, he knows if you've been bad or good. So be good for goodness sake. See, this is what God tries to teach you when he says, don't do the ways of the pagan because you don't know what they're doing. They don't know what they're doing. They don't know that they're claiming that this is the ultimate creator being. Okay, just the representation of it. And this is what you need to learn. You need to learn. This is why Hebrew is so important. There's so many words out there, like people in church say hallelujah, and they have no idea why they're saying hallelujah or what it means. Not at all. They say amen. They have no idea what amen means. They think that that's just the word that they're supposed to say at the end of a prayer. That's it. They have no idea what amen means. Okay? Good. Well, the word should be, in Hebrew, it should be amen or omen. This is an ultimate agreement with God, is what it is. But what they're saying is, right? And they say that that means in English, I agree. So be it. I agree. But they get the so be it from the movie The 10 Commandments, where it says, yeah, yeah, so let it be written, so shall it be done. That's where they get that phrase from. It's not really biblical. This is really, what is that? Because, see, you need to be careful of this stuff too. If you ultimately want to be holy, because you need to understand what you're doing, what you're saying, you're actually saying, look it up. All that they've left out is this, but it's understood, just like the 2 dots at the end of a letter. Exactly, Amun Ra. Whenever they would talk to Ra,
Let me
they would
repeat
say
that because I
Amun.
wasn't on the it wasn't on the air. I guess Ra means the Egyptian god Ra.
Right. They didn't always say Ra, but when they said Amun, they knew what they were talking about. The Egyptians, the people who worship the sun god. That's a question right there. That's a beautiful question. Why would it even be in our, just like he said up there, this is Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy. Is it? No. That's not the Hebrew names of the Bible. You know, the Hebrew names of the Bible comes from the first verse of every book. But in the Greek, Genesis means in the beginning. Right. And what has happened is the same thing with the Catholic Church and everybody else. Well, it's bringing people to God is good enough. No, it's not. It's bringing people to confusion. That's why everybody says, well, it's, you know, the Bible's not of any private interpretation. It depends on how you interpret it. No, it don't. God has a specific agenda and specifically what he wants you to learn. He does not want you to lean to your own understanding. And that's the problem. That's how we get this stuff. Right. Yes, but God expects us to walk a path that he has given us and not to sway off to the right or the left of the path. That's all it means. When you say repent, I'm going the wrong way. Well, boom, I'm turning around. I'm working towards God. I'm not working away from him. It's very simple, concrete suggestions. It's supposed to make you re-educate your mind. But this is how they mess things up. You know, they just change it back to what? The War Department now? Isn't that what it's called? Yeah, Department of War instead of what was it before? Yeah, Department of Defense. Now it's the Department of War instead of. Well, what does that tell you? What do you see when you see Department of Defense or Department of War?
Let's clarify, because when the founding fathers, when America first started, it was called the Department of War.
Exactly.
And then they changed it to the Department of Defense, I believe, after World War II.
Yeah.
And then, and so Trump has said, you know, this is a Department of War. We're going to call it that.
And exactly, he says that. What is he saying when he's saying that?
It means that we're not always going to be on the defense.
There you go. We're not being passive. We're going to be defensive. We're going to be out there and we're going to be
on the offense.
You come at us and we're going to go right back at you.
Exactly.
And that's what a change of language does. It sets you in a different mindset. So just remember, when you hear ho, ho, ho and things like that, don't just take it as, you know, what you've been taught. Look and see what it literally says and literally means. You know, I went to a different approach with this. I should have stayed with that when we taught it up at Johnson City. I was writing out my own notes from each lesson and copying that and passing it out. I hope everybody doesn't get confused with this that we're doing, but I will work on getting it better next time. But we need to look at the wording, understand the wording, because when you change it, it changes your understanding of it. Okay? Everybody have a peaceful week. Hopefully we'll see you Friday night at 7 o'clock, right? Yep, 7 o'clock. Deb will be here Thursday. You will be here Thursday?
We'll be here for Truth and Life today. That's tomorrow night, 7 o'clock. And Rumble, YouTube, Twitch, be there. Aloha.
Thank you and good night.